Good evening. Welcome to the Big Story. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Gretchen Ho.
And I'm Shawn Yao.
Tonight's Big Stories. President Marcos says he pored over all 4,057 pages of the General Appropriations Act of 2025, and nowhere did he find any of the quote-unquote damned blank items that former President Duterte had been talking about.
The Philippine economy grew by 5.6% in all of 2024, missing the official target for the second straight year. NEDA says we were hit by numerous setbacks like extreme weather and geopolitics, and this may well be the new normal.
And President Marcos hits back at China, who had been demanding that the Philippines return the Typhon missile system to the U.S. The president also said he will meet with President Trump to try to influence his immigration policies.
Straight into the top story we go. It's President Bongbong Marcos insisting once more that there were no blanks in the 2025 General Appropriations Act that he signed.
Well, he said this in front of the Supreme Court magistrates, to whom a petition has been filed to declare the GAA unconstitutional. Marcos called this an attempt to distract his administration's momentum.
But then, the president also admitted that he has no backup plan in case the Supreme Court decides to strike down the budget for this year. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza with tonight's Big Story.
For the first time this year, President Bongbong Marcos was back in the province that delivered over 1.5 million votes for him in the 2022 elections. His first stop in Cebu, a sit-down with the Regional Development Council 7 to discuss updates and progress in his priority projects. Then, it's off to the 20th National Convention mounted by the Integrated Bar of the Philippines. In front of Supreme Court justices and more than 3,000 lawyers, Marcos clapped back at critics of the 2025 General Appropriations Act. In particular, he tried to shut down persistent allegations of blanks left in the 2025 budget.
We shut down everything. I guess that's what they want. They want the government to cease working. So yung matuloy yung kanilang mga destabilization na ginagawa.
Marcos would not name names, but insinuated that there could be forces out there who want to disrupt his administration's momentum.
Because I reviewed it, analyzed it, and yes, in parts, vetoed it. And so for those of you, and up to now, I cannot find those damned blank items.
The president believes the petition in the Supreme Court to declare this year's GAA unconstitutional is part of the destabilization effort. House Appropriations Committee Vice Chair Zia Alonto Adyong is more upfront when it comes to who could be behind the destab move.
Kung titingnan mo rin kung who are the people behind the filing of the questioning the budget before the Supreme Court, they are all well connected with the Duterte.
Meantime, the president admits he has no contingency plan in case the High Court approves the petition of his former Executive Secretary Vic Rodriguez and Davao City 3rd District Representative Isidro Ungab. But he is standing by the belief that no law was violated when he signed the budget.
Solzen Maynard tells me that we are on a solid footing in terms of constitutionality. I don't know why they bothered to file that, because napakahirap ng kanilang assertion. It clearly doesn't... well, anyway, it's not for me to make the argument.
While in Cebu, Marcos also had a so-called unity lunch with governors and one Cebu officials who reaffirmed their support to the president through a manifesto. All 16 governors from Cebu and the Visayas region signed the manifesto. Marcos capped off the trip with the inauguration of the Mactan Cebu International Airport alternate runway in Lapu-Lapu City. Costing some 2.6 billion pesos, this is the first and only parallel runway in the Philippines. It's expected to improve operational efficiency and allow for more flights into and out of Cebu. Mobile journalist Julie Baiza, We Are One News.
While in Cebu, President Marcos was asked by reporters about other issues, including what he thought about China asking for the withdrawal of the Typhon missile system from the Philippines. And here's what he said.
I don't understand the comments on the Typhon missile system. We don't make any comments on their missile systems, and their missile systems are 1,000 times more powerful than what we have. Let's make a deal with China. Stop claiming our territory. Stop harassing our fishermen and let them have a living. Stop ramming our boats. Stop water cannoning our people. Stop firing lasers at us. And stop your aggressive and coercive behavior. And we'll return the Typhon missiles. Tigil nila yung ginagawa nila, babalik ko lahat yan.
Recall that the Typhon missile system was deployed by the U.S. in April of last year for the annual Balikatan exercises. But they did not pull it out after the joint drills. In fact, just last week, it was moved from Lawag Airfield to an undisclosed location in Luzon. Now, this angered China because the Typhon can fire multi-purpose missiles that can hit targets as far as China and Russia. It is not clear at this point how much longer the launcher will stay in the Philippines, but an army official has confirmed that Filipino troops will train on using the Typhon during drills next month. Meanwhile, Marcos also said he will meet with President Trump to see how he can influence immigration policies under him, but there were no details for when or where such a meeting will take place.
There's much that we need to discuss between the U.S. and the Philippines in terms of the trade, in terms of defense and security, and now the new policy on immigration. Nagpauwi na yata ng 100 na Pilipino. We'll see how we can influence the policy making in terms of immigration. These are the growing pains of a new administration. But I'm sure that with time, these policies will crystallize and will become clearer. And by which time, I will have a chance to visit with President Trump. And we can discuss it with a better understanding of what the policies are.
The Philippine Communications Office actually released a statement
clarify.
this, saying that President Marcos was expressing his desire to meet with President Trump. Remember, we were talking about this, if he was invited to the inauguration of President Trump, at mukhang hindi, ano? Pero yung, wala naman daw inimbitahan.
No, there were some
Pero actually,
South
meron
American
pala.
presidents there.
Argentinian president,
Yeah, there were
tsaka si
some-
Prime Minister of Italy,
There were
the
some
woman.
South American presidents there.
Hayaan mo na. Joke lang.
But also, yeah, because if there in today's press conference, if there had been a real meeting scheduled already between President Trump and President Marcos, that's a huge deal. That would make him one of the first presidents,
Correct.
from not just Asia but around the world to meet in
Ever,
person with President Trump, whom everyone at this point is obviously trying to get close to and trying to talk and trying to figure out how he works, right? So. Which brings me to my second point about influencing Trump's immigration policies. I'm not.
It's a bit ambitious. It's a lofty goal, but why not? But maybe
yeah,
it
why
just
not?
came out
You're right.
wrong. I mean, I think sometimes PBBM, when he's ambush interviewed, sometimes, it's just very casual,
candid, yeah.
very candid. Sometimes he doesn't complete his sentences.
Which
Pero-
is not good if you're the leader of 110 million people.
And for us journalists who try to complete
I
a
mean-
soundbite, it's a bit hard.
yeah.
I mean, President Trump's plate is probably full with the other conflicts, right? So this is our president trying to stick his agenda
Right.
into that plate.
Well, maybe someone asked him, and he was
right?
like, well,
Well,
if I
they-
was going to meet with him, this is what I would talk to him about.
No, he was asked specifically, the question was, will you meet with Trump? And I think Mr. sabi niya, ano yun? Or something like
Yeah.
that. And meet Trump? Yes, of course. I want, will meet
course I want to
Of course
meet
I
with
will
Trump.
meet with Trump. Right? So I guess he maybe misspoke
Misheard.
on the verbs there. Will meet versus want to meet.
meet.
But because I'm nitpicky, I will also pick on something else he said, which is
The
ilang daan.
4,057 pages?
No, no.
Okay.
Well, a lot of people online have already nitpicked that. Totoo daw bang he read
Right.
4,057
That's a lot of pages.
But the fact that he said in the soundbite as well, ilang daang Filipinos na na-deport. But we know this to not be true because we've been talking to DFA last night.
Last night,
DFA
Yusek
De Vega
De Vega.
clarified that yung 24 Filipinos that were deported were actually not deported under Trump, not at least not under Trump 2.0. There had been ongoing deportations even under Biden, and these 24
You have to
Filipinos
forgive the
were
president
under.
for not reading the briefers from the other departments because 4,057
Naguluhan
pages
siya
is
sa
a lot.
numero, di ba?
Oo.
But
Nalito
ilang
siguro
daan is
nababasa
so
niya eh.
ilang daan is so far from 24 who had already
kasi
been deported.
Bakit nga ba? Before we clarified the news with Yusek De Vega, there were reports that there were 80 more
80 plus 24
that
kasi
were
yung
going to be
number.
deported. So 100 plus yun.
104.
Pero clarify ni Yusek De Vega na 24 yung napauwi during Biden administration at meron pang 16
Pending na pending.
in the pipeline na papauwiin under the Biden administration.
Correct.
So
But
siguro naguluhan si Presidente.
again, this is far from the ilang daan, which sounds to me
Like
very
hundreds.
alarming.
Maraming-
correct.
We're talking mass deportation now, which is what everyone's scared of, or the fact that it's technically for the Philippine status quo under Trump, because let's be honest, when he talks mass deportations, he really has South Americans in mind, like the Mexicans, the Colombians, the Guatemalans, right?
The southern
That's
border.
why nagkakaroon ng trade war over there, because he's sending
Yes.
plane loads of undocumented migrants. But that's maybe also one reason why the DFA is not so worried about Filipinos. But again,
But he also didn't bring up, President Marcos did not bring up the answer na, okay, let's say I would meet with President Trump, hindi niya binanggit yung foreign aid freeze. Maybe because magulo din yung US.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Yes, they rescinded it. So parang ilang hours lang, less than 2 whole days lang
For-
na
45
rescind.
Maybe it's a
hours.
wait and see, right? They're just letting the U.S. president fix his affairs first, because he had a tremendous backlash after that foreign aid freeze, which he rescinded like 58 hours yata after declaring
Yeah.
the
According-
memorandum.
45 hours according to some wires.
45. 50.
According to some wires. I don't know the
Basta
exact
mga 2
details.
days, more or less.
Oh.
Oo.
But the
And he should get his numbers right. I mean, this is a very huge concern with the new administration, right? The welfare of Filipinos there.
yes, I don't mean that he has to have the exact number. I mean, it's an ambush interview, right? You're being asked about this or that issue. I just mean that don't casually throw out
Figures.
Kasi
if you're not
nagpapanik.
sure, because it
Nagpapanik ang mga
becomes
tao.
something.
Yes,
When you say
correct.
something, it becomes policy, it becomes a real thing, and then we in the media then have to scramble to verify this,
Totoo.
right?
Alam natin yan even as regular citizens, di ba? You post something online, sometimes kumakalat siya.
Katulad
What
nung
more
kay,
if you're the president?
Gloria Romero, na yung last will and testament.
Finally,
na
nakita ko na
fake
kagabi.
news ako doon. Oo. Yung,
Nung pinag-uusapan
yung
kasi-
700 million na kinita pala niya at binigay
Pero
daw sa
ang
mga
weird nung
charity at mga anak
post.
niya. Fake pala.
Yeah.
Oo.
Pero nakita ko rin kasi a lot of people, yung naka-blue check pa, they were already posting that the fake news nga of, sabi ko, ito pala yung tinutukoy ni Gretchen, finally. It hit me, but at least alam ko na by then na fake news siya.
Yeah, and you know, in terms of wanting to talk to Trump about his immigration policy to influence him, I mean, who wouldn't want that at this point,
Correct,
right?
correct.
Everyone and their dog is trying to get into Trump's head to try to understand what
but
is
you
going
know,
on.
maybe that's the point of doing the review, right?
Oh.
To get those negotiations going again under a new administration, like what they can leverage out of that.
Yeah.
To review all the numbers,
Yeah.
so they can leverage off their position.
Kumbaga
Yes.
realign, diba?
Diba?
That's what
Mas
they're saying,
ganun.
reviewing and realigning
Yeah.
again.
So now everybody's scrambling for foreign aid.
So now everybody's scrambling, and also the question for the Philippines is, what are we willing to trade, or what are we willing to give in exchange, right?
I mean,
that
what could
we
they
were
possibly
talking
need from
about
us, right? You have to
this.
start from that thought
Right.
process.
So now we're talking about. So we covered the Typhon missile, the fact that China wants it out, the U.S. wants to keep it in the Philippines, and so does the Philippines. And in fact, the AFP has already confirmed they're trying to buy a Typhon missile system. With what money, I'm not sure. But anyways, that's another issue. You know, it's this whole thing. It's become. We're training, the Filipino troops are going to be training on the Typhon missile system next month na, mid-February to late February. And will that become part of our arsenal? And if so, you know, is that being driven by the U.S.? And is that part of the equation? Is that part of our leverage with them? Right?
I
There's all
wonder
these
if it's
questions.
also being used in the conflict up north, like with Taiwan, right?
That's
Probably.
the
I mean-
implicit, unspoken understanding, I think. But
that is
no
part
one will
of our
admit
value,
it. Oh.
right? In terms of
Yeah,
leverage.
the sites as well.
Right.
More presence in Pacific for the
Remember,
United
it was
States.
4, it became 9, and you know, it's a big archipelago, the Philippines. There could be more.
Although our government officials keep insisting that we're not reliant on U.S. foreign aid, that we could do without it. Even Yusik Navega was saying.
That's right. That's
Well, we'll
right.
find
Or
out a
we'll
bit
find,
later.
we'll find other partners.
Because today I've been seeing some organizations that have been hit. But anyway, we will be talking about that later. Also, we're going to be pausing for a very quick break for now. But right after that, Philippine NGOs are starting to feel the pinch, as we have been talking about, of the U.S. government's freeze on foreign aid. One of them is mental and sexual health advocacy, Love Yourself. We will be speaking to the group's executive director, Dr. Vin Pagtakhan. When the big story returns, stay with us.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News. And just like that, the White House has rescinded a memo to reverse a federal grant freeze that sent America into confusion for 45 hours. The freeze caused widespread uncertainty among federal agencies and organizations that rely on federal funding, such as those in education, healthcare, environmental protection, and foreign aid. Trump defended the freeze, saying it was meant to allow a review of federal spending and eliminate what he deemed wasteful expenses.
We are merely looking at parts of the big bureaucracy where there has been tremendous waste and fraud and abuse. In that process, we identified and stopped $50 million being sent to Gaza to buy condoms for Hamas. 50 million. And you know what's happened to them? They've used them as a method of making bombs. How about that?
Several news outlets have fact-checked Trump's claims about condoms in Gaza and found no evidence to support his claims. CNN went so far as to dig up U.S. aid spending in the last 3 years under Biden and found there was no money spent on condoms for the entire Middle East during that time.
Let's talk about this some more with Dr. Vin Pagtakhan. He is the founder and executive director of Love Yourself. That is a volunteer community that provides free HIV testing, counseling, and treatment here in the Philippines. Vin, Dr. Vin, is that how I should call you? Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, and good evening, ladies.
Last
Thank
night,
you for...
Right. We have been talking about the U.S. aid freeze for a while, but it was only last night when we chanced upon your statement on social media and how you guys are directly affected by this. Can you share with us again exactly how much U.S. aid you guys use in your operations? You mentioned some services will be affected, but not all. Go ahead.
Well, we tried our best to make sure all of the programs that we have are sustainable. So there was a bit of a misunderstanding in the statement that I released because I mentioned that that none of our basic operations will be affected. So the free HIV testing, the treatment that we provide in all of the community centers that we have. So we have a total of 72 community centers all over the country. The testing of 250,000 people every year that we do, and the treatment for the 15,000 clients who are people living with HIV who are receiving treatment from us, it's going to be safe. So they are marked safe. So it's not affected by the sudden stop work order that we have. Unfortunately, the innovations that we have, so for example, the pre-exposure prophylaxis and the self-testing that we're providing, the deliveries of those interventions, we usually provide them for free for clients. Unfortunately, those are the support that are affected by the sudden stop work, and of course the human resources that's supporting those innovations. So right now all of those services are available still, but even if the services are available, if it comes with some cost, the number of reach scales down. So that's the most important thing that's happening that affects Love Yourself right now, scaling up the programs that we do. Unfortunately, while the government procures the medications and the test kits for the persons living with HIV and for those people who get themselves tested, innovations are not yet there. So when we introduce innovations, we do it through programs through international foreign aids, such as PEPFAR and USAID, and those are the things affected right now. But that is Love Yourself. We have so many community-based organizations all over the Philippines affected. We're just lucky that we came to a point that we are already self-sustaining, but there are organizations in Region 3, Region 4, Region 6 and 7, which are all part of USAID, PEPFAR, and CDC programs for HIV and sexual health program. that had to close down and stop operation or cut down costs, and they tell their staff to not work for the next 90 days. So those are the organizations who are more affected by this stop work
Order.
Order. But
order. Yeah.
Vin, can we backtrack a bit? Did you get an email from the State Department with this stop work order? Because I have seen one organization similar to the work that you guys do. They posted actually a screenshot of that email. So that gave us an idea that, there is actually an actual email. Was it the same for you guys?
Yes. Yes, there was one email, but it didn't come from them. So because here in the Philippines, we do not receive direct funding from PEFPAR. So we have like prime recipient. So they're FHI 360. They're the international organization receiving for the Philippines. So they were the ones who sent us that starting yesterday, all of the activities will need to stop with no details whatsoever. So they're also uncertain of what's gonna happen. So it came as a shock to everyone that we had to stop everything that we're doing, the life-saving interventions that we're doing, we had to stop them. So Love Yourself had to set a step back and reassess our programs, because we used to send 700 to 1,500 free HIV test kits every day. So those things we have to step back and ask our clients, can they pay for the delivery fees, and even for pre-exposure prophylaxis, those are affected. Even much more are the organizations who rely 100% on the grants, because USAID PEFR EPIC project is a project that created several community centers that replicated the model of Love Yourself, wherein they do testing and treatment for free. Unfortunately, they are fully reliant on those grants, so they had to close down temporarily for the next 90 days. Hopefully, soon, I was advocating that I hope they could reconsider and reassess everything fast, because people's lives depend on it. South Africa, many countries that we partner with rely their procurement of ARVs through the USA PEFR. So they're more affected than the Philippines, because very fortunate Pilipinas, because the government, Department of Health, already procures the medicines for us.
Vin, I'm a bit confused because you said it is the stop work order that has affected your operations. But how about the money that goes into your organization? Is that not touched, or is it part of what's being frozen? Because President Trump, as you know, already rescinded the memorandum. So what is the status now? And when you say the stop work order has affected you, in what way has it paralyzed your organization?
So it didn't actually paralyze us. What it did was all the innovations that we're doing, we had to slow down, because everything that we do, we provide for free, right? So for example, the deliveries for the condoms, the lubricants, for the self-testing kits, and the prep, all of those had to pause, because we had to re-navigate how we could deliver them to the client. Should they agree to have delivery fees
is
for
it because of labor, lacking labor? Kasi pag sinabing stop work order, yung tao yung apektado dyan di ba? I mean, am I interpreting it correct?
Both po. So the delivery fees are affected, and the people working to distribute and fulfill the orders are also asked to stop working. Yeah, so that's how it affects us, and as well as all the campaigns, the HR costs doing the campaigns and the digital mobilizing people to promote awareness. They had to stop working. They were asked to stop working for the next 90 days. Now, yes, there was a new update about that, but we haven't got any updates through our partner. So as of the moment, status quo pa rin kami from the last email. Kasi they were also asked not to report to work. So even people who are working here in the Philippines for FHI 360 and USAID were asked to not report muna. So talagang lahat kami clueless kung ano yung mangyayari. Even nag-retract sila ng a little bit, because yung very it's very unclear din yung retraction. Ang sabi ay support for treatment. Kaya lang kasi what we're getting here in the Philippines is mostly for prevention.
Right.
Yeah.
Vin, sorry, we're running out of time, but I wanted to squeeze in a last question. You talked about how the innovations moving forward had been affected. So we're talking about self-testing kits that may never be distributed, or you won't be able to do that anymore, the awareness campaigns. But give us an idea of how big an impact this might have on the Philippines. How many people might you not be catering to, and how big could the problem grow?
Well, just imagine we test 250,000 people every year. And among those 250,000, we gather around 1,500 to 1,800 newly diagnosed people living with HIV. And 20% of those clients come from our outreach programs through our self-testing. And moreover that, PrEP is the newest innovation that we have that actually has 99 to 100% effectivity rate when it comes to prevention of HIV. So it will actually halt yung prevention component na ginagawa natin imbis na we're helping stop the epidemic here in the Philippines. Talagang yung mga programang yun, magsuslow down sila. And, we need to actually scale it up and to slow it down when it needs to, go turbo at the moment will really affect what we're doing.
All right, Vin, thank you so much. As we know, of course, ang dami nating HIV remains one of the big problems here in the Philippines. The rate of the spread is quite big, and that prophylactic, hopefully, will be freed, from the confusion of this freeze order. Dr. Vin Pagtakhan, founder and executive director of Love Yourself, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you so much, lady.
Another quick break for now, but right after that, 5 men are arrested for alleged espionage, with one of them even posing as a tourist in Palawan. The details when we return. Keep it here. Welcome back. You're still watching The Big Story here on One News.
We are following this developing story, which is that of a passenger flight in military helicopter that collided mid-air over the States, and here's what we know. The devastating crash occurred Wednesday night U.S. time. According to aviation and defense officials, 300 first responders were already on the scene for a massive search operation. The Washington Post reports that bodies have been retrieved from the water. However, there are still no confirmed survivors as of this time. The passenger aircraft, American Airlines Flight 5342, was en route from Wichita, Kansas to Washington, D.C. It was carrying 60 passengers and 4 crew members. Among the passengers on board were Russian world figure skating champions Evgenia Shishkova and Vadim Naumov, as reported by Russian state media. U.S. figure skating also shared with the Washington Post that several of their figure skaters were also aboard the flight. Meanwhile, the Black Hawk helicopter based out of Fort Belvoir, Virginia, had 3 military officers on board at the time of collision.
Grabe. So I was following this since just this evening, and when I caught wind of it, and there's still pretty much no clarity on what happened. They're still doing the search and rescue, but the thing is, it's so cold right now in Washington, and that Potomac River is very dark and very cold.
Shocking news.
Shocking because
I think that this is the third airplane incident in 2025.
Yeah.
Tama ba?
And mid-air collisions are so rare, but
Also with a military chopper.
In the past 6 months, there were a couple of near collisions. I just don't remember where. I think it was also in the U.S. or Korea. There were a couple of near collisions. No, there was one in the U.S. a few weeks ago, near collisions, and that's a big enough story. But an actual mid-air collision is, it's just...
It's next to impossible with all the radar systems,
with all
the
advanced equipment.
Yes,
Yeah.
And so
air
you
traffic
wonder what
control.
happened there.
Yes. And I'm sure that's what
Is it too much traffic?
There shouldn't be a problem because there's a flight control
Yeah,
there's
that's
an
what
air
the
traffic control officer.
air traffic controllers
Control is,
for
yeah.
ATC, right? And remember, this is DC, the capital of the United States. So if any state has advanced equipment, it would be Washington DC, right? So
You're hovering above the
yeah. It
the
just
White
I mean,
House.
it just it's a terrible tragedy, and it just boggles the mind how these things could still happen in this modern day and age with all the technology that we have. So
Yeah, like a mid-air collision. I have not actually heard about that until recent days.
President Trump, as far as we know, has been briefed, although he's been posting on X as well that
He said he called the crash a bad situation that looks like it should have been prevented.
Yeah.
That was his post on X, but it is not immediately clear whether he was tweeting just
before he was
knee-jerk
briefed.
before he was briefed.
Yeah. Okay, anyways, here at home, we've got some economic numbers for you. Full year and fourth quarter GDP numbers for 2024 were released this morning, and both, well, came in below expectations. The Philippine Statistics Authority said economic growth for Q4 last year came in at 5.2%, same as the third quarter figure. That makes it the weakest reading in more than a year. The economy was battered by weaker consumption and extreme weather, and NEDA says they accounted for the 6 typhoons that struck the country from October to November. True enough, agricultural output in the final quarter of the year shrank 2.2%, the third straight quarter of contraction. Crops, livestock, and fish production were all hit. The Q4 GDP reading brings the full year figure for 2024 to 5.6%, well below not just expectations but also the official target. The government was working towards 6 to 6.5% growth at least. This is the second straight year that the Philippines has missed its goal. As you can see on the chart, 2022 was the last year the government exceeded the upper band of its target. NEDA says the country faced, quote, numerous setbacks last year, and this may well be the new normal.
In 2024, we faced numerous setbacks, to say the least, like extreme weather shock, extreme weather events, geopolitical tensions, and subdued global demand, and pretty much similar to the challenges that we encountered in 2023. This suggests to us at NEDA that these conditions may actually represent the new normal.
All right, let's try to dissect these numbers. We have on the show with us tonight economist and financial strategist Jonathan Ravelas. Good evening, Jonas. Welcome back to the Big Story. Thanks for taking our call, by the way.
Okay, good evening, ladies. Happy Chinese New Year.
Yes, Kyung Hee Hwa Tsai to you.
Happy Chinese
Happy
New
Chinese
Year.
New Year, which is, not started off on the greatest of, not on the most solid of footing because we got GDP numbers, 5.2% only for 2024. The government was trying for 6 to 6.5%. Of course, we've heard NEDA talk about extreme weather, geopolitical risks, and weaker global demand. But what do you think? What did you make of these numbers when you saw them?
Oh, well, basically, initially I was hoping that fourth quarter would have shown a recovery of consumption, but it seems that despite, everybody was at the malls, because of the Christmas season, we've seen that the fourth quarter consumption was still low at 4.7% compared to 5.2% in the third quarter. So this is something that despite the expectations that inflation has already come down, we're still struggling in terms of consumption. So this is something that I think will not go away as long as there's geopolitical tensions, climate hazards, events. Then definitely inflation will still be on the forefront of the drag on consumption. And the other thing that worth noting is that even on the services in the fourth quarter was down to around 6.7%.
Jonas, did this shock you at all? I wanted to just find out of curiosity, what your estimate was for full year 2024 GDP. And also, do you agree? Because you were saying, this might not go away for a while. That's exactly what Yusek Edilion also said earlier. I think she said this could very well be the new normal.
Well, I let's put it this way. I think these events were just so much highlighted since 2023, mainly because of the Russia-Ukraine war, and then eventually you had the Israel-Hamas, which further created a lot of tensions. At the same time, created a lot of impact on the supply chain. So there are disruptions that have affected it. So in terms of the fourth quarter, I was quite hopeful that we would have probably printed 5.8%. I was a bit hopeful that the fourth quarter, a recovery in the consumption, especially with the Christmas and eventually the impact of the national election. So that's going to happen in May 2025. But it seems that, again, because of the climate hazards or the weather events that we had in the fourth quarter, really didn't create that recovery. Now, the question is, will we see that recovery in 2025? So that's the question. So my full year was also at 5.8%. So that's short of 5.6, which was basically the full year. So 2025, I'm a bit optimistic to probably see 6 to 6.3%. That's the baseline view at 6%. And that's on the assumption that three things. One, we have the recovery of consumption. The second is government infrastructure spending, which in the fourth quarter registered a good growth of around 9.7%. So that's actually good, coming from a 5% in terms of the third quarter. So if that continues, then we could see that 6% at least in 2025.
Jonas, NEDA recommended for the BSP to have a rate that is supportive of economic growth. What would you recommend for that rate level to be to ease the burden on consumers here?
Okay, I think it's a bit tricky, especially now that there is the trade war, Trump's tariff, and then it's a bit difficult to probably try to price in rate cuts. Maybe we can do at best 50 basis points for this year. That's why last year I was expecting the BSP at its last meeting to do at least 50 basis points rather than a quarter, especially now that the peso has weakened from the 57 level end of 2024. We're now at 58.28, although the recent high was closer to 58.70. So the vulnerability is still there. So there's a very little wiggle room to probably bring down rates by more than 50 basis points.
Jonas, when they announce GDP numbers, they often break it down by industries, by sectors. But of course, we already know agriculture was going to get hit in a big way. But I'm more interested in one thing, which is how big of an impact do you think the pullout of POGOs had on our final numbers?
Oh, well, eventually that actually was more seen in the consumption.
You think that contributed to low consumption?
Has slowed down.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, the consumption was from 5.2% to 4.7%, and consumption accounts for more than 70% of our economy.
Not real estate.
No, in terms of real estate plays an important role, but from the demand side, consumption plays the biggest role in our economy. That's why we always think about OFW remittances, because they are one of the main players in the consumption side. And that's why we also want the services sector. And the services sector only grew 6.7% from 6.3%.
But let's delve into that real estate bit. We're getting a lot of reports from the PSA and also from the real estate groups or those companies that lease out a lot of properties. Do you think that the POGO departure, the oversupply in mid-range condos, low office uptake, will that all be like risk factors or headwinds heading into this year and this year's numbers?
No, basically, I guess there are a lot of things that's happening in the real estate. One, of course, the departure of the POGOs highlights that there's, again, a huge oversupply, or shall I say, a supply of uh, leasable space, which can be taken by the education sector. So that should actually boost, and this is something that we need to be able to do so that we're able to upskill our workers, especially with this risk of being deported in the US, then may as well start working on where to redeploy these people. So we need to be able to upskill our workers. In terms of, I guess, the impact on the BPOs and the others, I think there's still that demand. I think what is just worrisome is that there's a lot of supply on the condo, and it seems that mainly because of the slow economy as well as the rising interest rate, that's creating just this sort of oversupply.
Well,
So as long as rates doesn't go high enough that they'll be forced to sell, I think maybe it will take probably 1 to 2 years before we get to see real estate prices moving again. But there is a positive news to it. Once we get a better feel of the transportation sector, where we get to see more developments of public infrastructure on transportation, that should improve property prices.
It's interesting to me to hear you say that you think education can fill the gap. What do you mean by that, Jonas? Usually, kasi
No,
the
because right
expecta-
now, 50% of our economy, so everyone talks about the demographic dividend. So among the ASEAN countries, we're the youngest.
Yeah.
So I guess all of us, four of us here have way past the 50% of Filipinos, which is
Grabe naman.
26.5. Diba?
fair enough.
So
Fair
the
enough.
reality, fair enough.
Maybe
The
we fall into that.
26.5 is very important because the absorbent mind to shift to the needs of the new economy, whatever it means, it's very easy to study. Once you pass 30, there's a difficulty with dexterity and absorbing new information. So we need to be able to retrain people to the needs of this new economy. Do they need to be data scientists to be able to grasp how to read the tea leaves that's there, the type of data that we see every day? Or do we need to be able to learn other languages so that we're able to do other things? Whether it be they become the next tour guides or whoever. So we need to be able to determine the needs of the new economy because we are supplying them anyway. It's just that we know that there are a lot of threats, whether it's the Middle East because there's a war or there's a immigration issue in the US. But in other parts of the world, like Europe, I would probably say the likes of Austria, there's a big need for nurses, for the healthcare. Then we should start pivoting to those type of areas into those type of needs so that we're still able to take advantage of this demographic dividend. On the other hand, because of the public infrastructure program of government, we're trying to encourage manufacturing to come to the Philippines so that jobs will be created. That's what we need to be able to try to take advantage. But the key at the moment, while we're waiting for all of this infrastructure to come, we need to retrain people.
Jonas, I've been
We
excited.
need to retrain them.
Right, loud and clear. But that's so interesting, though, the education, which has been liberalized, I believe, for investors. Maybe we wait for that to come in. But I'm just also curious, we've been talking about this legislated wage hike of about 200 pesos. How will that factor into, us missing our GDP growth targets, into possible more inflation to sustain this whole year or maybe until next year? How would that work? What are your thoughts on the 200 peso wage hike?
And that all important consumption numbers, because it works both ways, right? Yes, you're putting more money into the pocket of
Yeah.
people, but then the business owners, the ME owners lose more money. So how does it work?
Yes. Okay, so this is, I guess, the difficulty. At the start of the year, the government, just like the three kings, gave us so many things. higher electricity prices, gasoline prices, which are up by, close to 5 pesos already on a year to date. And then you have water increases, and then you had the toll charge increase. So these are challenging on the part of the consumer. Now, if we were to add legislated wage hike across the board, this will create secondary effects, meaning instead of helping everybody, this will be an added burden to our consumption, and it would put pressure on the price basket. So typically, the solution there is to look at areas where we can do a legislate, not across the board, but certain areas that needs to be adjusted. If they can still absorb it at the present levels, then they should. So it's a regional wage board adjustment, not across the board, to be able to mitigate the certain circumstances in certain areas. So definitely the likes of Metro Manila, there could be some adjustments that will be needed.
Help me understand if the slowdown in GDP growth was caused by extreme weather events and geopolitical tensions. Help me understand what was different about 2024, knowing that we also faced in the past severe typhoons, droughts,
the Ukraine war started in 2022.
I mean, what is different in 2024? And when you say new normal, what would you attribute that to?
Let's put it this way. In the last decade, especially from 2016 to 2020, during Trump 1.0, there was actually no wars. Trump was purely a businessman person. Sad to say that if we were to look at those periods, there was no war. So, prices, inflation was quite okay. With the exception of 2018, there were problems in agriculture in the Philippines. So, we had tightness, particularly on rice. So that's why we started the rice tarification adjustments. So from then, of course, with the Ukraine and Russian war, we've seen the impact of the cost to agriculture, especially the importation of pesticides, fertilizer, which are much needed to improve agriculture, became more expensive.
Yeah.
So, of course, when you added the Israel-Hamas, there were supply chain disruptions along the way, particularly for the likes of crude and other commodities. So that created an element of rising costs, including the cost of shipping.
Yeah.
So these were other problems. And then you add to that the slight adjustment in the volatility of the exchange rate. So businesses were already burdened by higher prices.
Yeah.
So despite inflation has come down, there are still other bottlenecks. And we have seen this in terms of here in the Philippines. No? The cost of importation rice have come down.
Yeah.
The only problem is that from the importer, from the wholesaler to the distributors, the distributors haven't lowered their spread. So these are basically the likes of supermarkets. That's why people are not feeling the the drop in prices. We need to see some adjustments in this.
Yeah.
So
Especially...
that's really cost a lot of, shall I say, cost of doing business was quite expensive. So, and the environment itself had no positive things to look at. There are more downside risks to not only on the Philippines, but even to the global. The impact of the Trump tariffs will really put a dampener on the markets, and people will be more attracted to countries like the U.S. and keeping the dollar stronger.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. There's a lot. It's all connected, as is always the case in the economy. But we're gonna have to leave that there. Thank you so much for sharing with us your insights and helping us make sense of these numbers. That was economist and financial strategist Jonas Rovelas.
Thank you.
In other news, 5 more alleged Chinese spies have been arrested after supposedly taking photos and videos of Philippine Navy activities in Puerto Princesa, Palawan. The suspects posed as tourists during their stay in the province. Mobile Journal Yeda Pascual with a report.
This video shows this man taking videos and pictures of Puerto Princesa's port, quite normal for thousands of tourists who visit Palawan. But local residents suddenly became suspicious when the man started setting up a camera on a tree.
Doon ako nagdududa, parang kahina-hinala yung kilos nila kasi nakaharap po doon sa West Philippine Sea. Kasi doon po ang daanan ng barko ng mga Coast Guard, Philippine Navy.
The man didn't stop there as he was also seen taking video and photos of the naval detachment in Ulugan Bay, which is part of the AFP's Naval Forces West Command.
Nagpapalipad din po sila ng drone. Doon yung barko lang po ng Navy po yung itsura nila po.
That man along with 4 others were later on arrested after pursuit operations by authorities. 2 were apprehended as they landed in Naiya, 2 in Binondo and Intramuros, while their alleged field commander was caught in Dumaguete. The suspects initially identified themselves as tourists from Taiwan, but among those confiscated from them were various ID cards with different names.
Yung nahuli namin sa Terminal 3, they have just committed the crime of espionage. After the arrest, we've received another intelligence packet and we've conducted verification na aside sa dalawang grupo na yon, meron silang kasama dito sa Manila na they were about to link for the collation of the data.
The NBI believes this group would have links with Deng Yang King, who was arrested on January 17 for supposed spying activities.
Itong grupo nito, sila po ang nagmamanman doon sa Palawan, no? Naglagay po sila ng CCTV camera, a high-resolution solar-powered camera. Yan po ay military grade, no? At hindi available sa Lazada at any market here in the Philippines. Yan po ay manufactured ng Hesai company na doon po sa China.
The suspects have denied the espionage accusations, but the AFP and NBI are confident in their findings.
The information are actually being sent real-time kung bakit tuwing nagre-resupply mission tayo. Pag alis pa lang nung barko natin, alam na nila. Meron kaming nakita at least 4 pa na mga CCTV na nakakalat po dun.
The group's alleged leader, however, claims he is just an ordinary businessman.
Hindi man. May mga negosyante talaga. Halapin kami, mga blano kami, mga negosyo, mga lobster, seafoods.
Lobster? Para saan naman yan?
Negosyo.
This is Mobile Journal Yeda Pascual. We are One News.
And this one we were just talking about earlier, the House bill mandating a 200 peso daily minimum wage hike has hurdled the House Committee on Labor and Employment. This measure aims to implement the increase across all minimum wage earners in the country. Committee Chairman Fidel Nograles explained that it took them 8 months to pass the bill because they still had to hear out what all stakeholders had to say about the matter. Meantime, labor groups protested in front of the Batasang Pambansa. They fear that the legislated wage hike won't be passed on time. The House only has until Wednesday next week to conduct sessions before they take a break for the midterm elections campaign period. The bill can be railroaded, though, if President Marcos certifies it as urgent. Now, our big picture tonight is all about the workers that stand to benefit from this proposed minimum wage hike. Here are just 4 among millions of Filipinos toiling every day. This photo was taken by Noel Pabalate of the Philippine Star from a construction site along Commonwealth Avenue in Quezon City today. At the same time that this photo was taken, a House panel was determining how much pay increase minimum wage earners should get, and these construction workers are just simply carrying on with their tasks. For them, it's just another day on the job.
I think there's about 5 million minimum wage earners in the country. So that's why this gets set aside because compared to the whole working population, pag kinumpare mo, for example, yung mga tricycle driver, jeepney driver, farmers, they're not included in the minimum wage segment.
Yes, they're in a different category.
That's correct. So that doesn't mean, though, that they don't need the wage hike.
There's also a huge cross-section of working people, working adults who do not because they don't have a job, they'll just take on jobs for less than minimum
Freelancers,
wage.
self-employed. But as Jonathan was saying, the danger here is we're going to cause secondary effects in inflation, in the economy, and what he fears could happen is that instead of encouraging more consumption, businesses or MSME owners start pulling back.
Spending.
Right, because now you have to pay for more for your workers, so you're going to have to cut investment somewhere else. It has to go.
The House Speaker was
Something has to
saying
give.
that the last time a huge wage increase happened was
Late
1989
80s.
ba
Yeah,
yun?
89.
And he was saying that if it was possible then to do a wage hike without causing inflation, it could be possible.
It was so
time
different then.
then.
1989 was like
But we shall debate that another day
have
because
run
we've run out of time.
We have run out of time. And before we say goodbye also, we would like to share our condolences with the family and the loved ones, the colleagues of our dearly departed Congressman Edsel Lagman. Kong Edsel was a big supporter of workers' rights, human rights
as well. Human rights advocate.
Even the budget.
Labor rights as well.
Labor rights, yeah. We would always call him,
He's
right?
fighting for the small people.
Could I just add to that? I'd also like to express my condolences to the family of Coach Sammy Akailar from the volleyball community. He's a Philippine team coach, brought numerous championships to his team in the NCAA. Also was my coach for some time in the RP Juniors team. Deeply beloved by the whole volleyball family. So we send our prayers and condolences and our sorrows to
all the
the
bereaved.
family of Akailar.
Kailar, and of course Congressman Edsel Lagman. On that very sad note, that's it for the big story on this Thursday night.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.
Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.